to start with everything that is going on here in Washington and where we stand as of today. Of course, we've been telling you guys that all of these different issues are coming to a head. You've got potential government shutdown. That piece seems actually like it's set to be resolved. They're going to pass a continuing resolution and kick that one down the road. So that one seems to be off the table. Debt ceiling coming to a head. Government's going to run out of room under the debt ceiling on October 18th, according to Janet Yellen. I'm going to talk about that in my monologue and a potential solution there. But of course, the other two pieces that we want to focus on first are the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation package. So the deal has always been, we're going to link these two things together. The corporatists want the infrastructure package. The progressives want the reconciliation bill. If everybody sort of joins hands and votes for each other's things, then we can get both of these things through. That has been the deal that when I spoke to Senator Sanders, that he had struck with Pelosi, everybody was on the same page, right? Well, as of this week, Nancy Pelosi has now broken that promise and that deal and is tearing those two things, delinking the infrastructure package and that reconciliation bill. She is pushing forward with a vote on the infrastructure package on Thursday, again, effectively delinking those two things. So that's the state of play. You can throw this first tweet up on the screen that just lays out that element of what is going on. This is from Heather Cagle. She says, so to recap, Pelosi is delinking the two major bills here, infrastructure and the reconciliation package, that effectively reverses months-long vow to only pass them in tandem. Progressives, a lot of them outraged. You had Rashida Tlaib tweeting that this was a betrayal before she deleted that tweet. I guess she got some pressure there.
Got a call from the office, huh?
Right, yeah, right. A little call from somebody who wasn't happy about that one. But this is a huge deal that effectively Pelosi has broken with the promise she made to progressives. Reportedly, even Schumer is pissed off and wasn't consulted about this move. Now, I will say, Pelosi's language around this when she was asked about like, well, these progressives are still saying they're going to vote down the infrastructure package since the reconciliation bill hasn't been voted on in the Senate. And she effectively said, well, people will do what they have to do. So it doesn't sound like she's kind of pulling out the knives and threatening people that you must vote for the infrastructure package and really whipping hard within the progressive caucus to get them to fall in line. But still a very significant break and what she has been saying all along.
No, this is one of the biggest failures in Washington in modern memory. It's a bigger failure than Obamacare. Look, we don't know the final results, but I have spoken to many people who are in the know, and not a single person actually expects this thing to pass, both the infrastructure bill and the reconciliation package. Effectively, both appear dead. Kyrsten Sinema was at the White House like 3 times yesterday. All the reporting comes out that her and Manchin still not budging. So I would put the group of bad actors into 3 categories who basically killed this. Number 1 is Pelosi, both by delinking it and effectively giving in to her, Josh Gottheimer people. She set a hard date. 2, obviously Sinema and Manchin, who increasingly it's becoming clear they straight up just never wanted to pass this thing, and they are also willing to lose the bipartisan bill if it means not voting for it.
Let me pause you there. One of the weird things here is that reportedly at meetings with the White House and everybody, they're like, okay, and Kyrsten Sinema apparently is the worst actor, the two of them. If you had to pick the worst actor in all of this, they're like, okay, well, give us a number. What's a top line? What programs do you want to strip out? Like, what are you actually for here? And she just won't say. Like, you can't work with someone who won't even tell you what they might support. They'll tell you, okay, I don't want corporate tax increase. I don't want these taxes increases. This bill is too high, et cetera, et cetera. But the next phase is to say, okay, well, what could you get behind? What could you support? And she's just playing games. I mean, as you said, it just becomes clear that she is way more interested, and we're going to get to this in a moment, in whatever her post-Senate career is going to be and how she's going to cash in the private sector than she is in getting anything passed through this process.
That's right. And so the other person, though, is Biden. And I will never forgive him. I mean, really, in terms of whether I like the bill or not, it doesn't even matter. I'm saying in terms of being a president, this is your job. His whole pitch to the American people, I've been there 40 years. I know the Senate in and out. He critiqued Obama. Well, Obama did a better job on Obamacare than he's currently doing right now, and that's saying something. So this isn't just me saying this. Put this up there on the screen. Several senior Democrats are hoping Biden will more forcefully weigh in on the infrastructure vote Thursday, publicly declaring that the bill needs to be passed. Now, they want him to just come out in terms of the bipartisan infrastructure package. But look, at the very beginning of the process, he kicked it to Congress. Who does that? Did we learn nothing once again from Obamacare? Allowing all of this nonsense, the committees and, the trying to get the different coalitions to try and gather. He actually trusted that Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer knew how to do their jobs. Bro, I don't know what exactly you were thinking whenever it came to that. He did not marshal the resources of the White House behind it. He let them try and figure out their strategy. And now they're screwed on multiple fronts. Default on the debt ceiling looks like a very, very real possibility. Chuck Schumer says there's no way we can do this thing through reconciliation, if there even is a reconciliation. October 18th ain't that far away. They say procedurally it's not going to work. McConnell says, screw you, I'm not going to vote for it. So we've got that. Full faith and credit of the U.S. debt whenever it comes to extending the debt ceiling. But more importantly, these were his biggest, these were the legacy items. These were, whatever you think of Obamacare or not, Obama ran on Obamacare in 2012. And by that time, a lot of the anger against it had kind of dissipated. And people said, no, you know what, this preconditions thing, at least that part, that's pretty nice. And he was rewarded at least somewhat for it in the presidential election. What has Biden got behind his belt? The country is at a 55% disapproval whenever it comes to COVID, which, the only thing that actually matters right now. The country does not trust him on the economy. People kind of remember the American Rescue Plan. They're not happy with the way Delta is being handled. I mean, you put it all together, it's a total disaster, his entire presidency.
The American Rescue Plan, is that what that thing was called?
I think it was. Whatever the text were.
The relief bill at the beginning of this administration. Essentially, all of those provisions have expired or are set to expire. So yeah, people are like, what have you done for me lately? I mean, that's not a legacy, a short-term cash stimulus infusion. That's not a legacy. That doesn't change people's lives over the long term. It was really important Band-Aid at the time, but now, I mean, we're still in not great situation here with the pandemic, and all of those provisions are either gone or set to expire in the very near term. These are the legacy pieces. This is the part that, and more important, I don't really care about whether Joe Biden has a great presidency or not. I care about delivering for people. These are the areas where you actually can have an impact on people's lives. This week is the whole ballgame, and Biden is nowhere to be found. The strategy and the tactics here from the beginning were idiotic, did not take a genius to see that, listen, you get a honeymoon period at the beginning of your presidency. He proved himself to be more popular than any other Democrat in the country, really, and had this kind of halo at the beginning, especially vaccines were starting to roll out, and you do get that cash stimulus infusion into the economy. And when you didn't seize that momentum and do anything with it, the whole thing fell apart. Not to mention that he wanted this freaking bipartisan deal, and they wasted all kinds of time wrangling with people to get a few Republicans on board, and they did have a good margin in the Senate. Of course, now all the Republicans have basically run away from this thing. If you're thinking that Republicans are going to help the corporatists in the House rescue the infrastructure package, you're wrong about that. They're whipping against it. Very few of them are going to join with the Democrats in voting for that. So you wasted all this time. You backed this incredibly confusing process that makes no sense and has created this situation that we find ourselves in now. And you're nowhere to be found in terms of pressing the case of the American people, or at least publicly putting pressure on the players that you need to fall in line. Now, I will say he was supposed to go to Chicago. He canceled his trip in a sign that he recognizes that there's a lot at stake this week. But, so far he's been having meetings, literally nothing. No progress seems to be made. Now, I want to throw in the caveat. We've seen this many times before in Washington where it seems like there's no way these two sides come together, and how could it ever happen to keep the government going or avoid the debt ceiling or actually get something through. And at the last minute, when you think it's all over, somehow they manage to work it out. That's a possibility here, but it's pretty unclear how this is all ultimately going to work out. And I think the problem with Sinema is, on the one hand, she's vulnerable to a primary challenge in Arizona. The Democrats in Arizona are furious with her. They keep
if
passing,
she even decides to run again.
That's the problem, is it looks like she doesn't even really care to run again. And one of the signs that we have of that is, this is reporting from the New York Times, while all of this is going on, she's just shamelessly brazenly raising money from the very business groups that oppose the reconciliation bill. So she's raking in cash.
A 45-minute speech to a fundraiser.
From the very worst actors in all of this who have an interest in killing it. This is really shameless stuff. Normally, politicians at least try to appear like they're acting in the interest of their constituents or whatever. Like, she's not even pretending that she cares about the impact that this would have on her constituents. A lot of these provisions in this bill, at least like the prescription drug thing that she's now said she's against, like she ran on that thing. She told her constituents that she backed this, but now she's more interested in whatever the corporate players have to say about it, which is why, look, I don't know that she cares about staying in the Senate. I don't know that she cares about a primary challenge. I think she seems to be much more clearly focused on how much money she can make in the private sector afterwards. So we've got a little summary tweet of where things stand as of now to kind of recap. So Rachel Bade says, look, Manchin is still refusing to commit even after he meets with Biden, and he gave him no top line number, and apparently Biden didn't force him to give a top line number. Bernie is issuing a battle cry, which we're going to play for you in just a moment, to progressives to kill the bipartisan infrastructure deal. And it seems like the progressives are serious about doing that. They've been very clear and very vocal and haven't backed down at all. Schumer has turned on Pelosi, showing he does not agree with her strategy of delinking these bills and having the Thursday vote. And President of the United States is MIA and not whipping in either direction. And her final comment is, Dems are in. Yeah. Dems are in. That's right.
That's right.
Progressives, again, they seem like they're serious about not voting for the infrastructure deal on Thursday. That means 100% it will fail if Pelosi does, in fact, bring it to the floor. Let's take a listen to a very frustrated Bernie Sanders and what he has to say about all of this.
Are you making any progress there?
Well, I'm not, the answer is that is what is very troubling to me. The answer, I think, I'm not in the middle of all those negotiations, but Senators Sinema and Manchin, as I understand it, were in the White House today. From what I can hear from the reports is no. It goes on and on and on. We're talking and nothing is happening. And I think that's why it's important that we defeat the infrastructure bill in the House, and that if these guys want to see the infrastructure bill passed, they're going to have to deal with us in reconciliation.
And is that part of your worry, if the talks aren't really not progressing with the infrastructure bill still in limbo? Once the infrastructure bill is passed, then there'll be no motivation for them to talk.
That's about it, yes.
A couple things you hear there. Number one, he's not in these negotiations. He's been sidelined. And number two, very clear there that he believes progressives should kill the infrastructure package. He issued a tweet that was also very clear saying you got to vote this thing down. From what Ro Khanna and others have told me, Bernie really is sort of driving the ship in terms of setting the tone and the pace and the strategy for progressives. So I think they are actually, if it comes to the floor, I think they will actually vote it down.
I think, look, this is why I'm convinced that it's irreconcilable. And I keep looking at it because, as you point to, there is no evidence that Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema want anything. Sinema's already said what? I'm against all tax increases. It's like, okay, well then what does that mean? You're not gonna, Biden said he won't deficits finance the bill. So if you're against tax increase, then it's not gonna happen. Manchin, he's like, parts of the bill are troubling to me, but I'm just not there yet. Well, like, what does that mean, right? He wants to mean test the child tax credit. He wants to mean test several other areas. That actually is basically a non-starter with the rest of the coalition. The more you start to think about it, there is no top line figure which they could agree with, because all of them would take months of extra negotiation, and then all of it's supposed to get done before Thursday, tomorrow. Give me a break. It's just not going to happen. Tremendous failure of leadership by Biden. Pelosi also. I mean, Pelosi really is, by delinking the bill, effectively, absolutely gutting it. They're probably doing a way in order to push it. But Schumer also dramatically miscalculating whenever it comes to the debt ceiling, putting the Dems in this situation, creating the crunch. And here's the thing. Most people at home, even most people listening to this segment, most people don't even know what reconciliation is. They have no idea. They don't even know what's in the damn bill. The Dems have done a terrible job of actually telling people what they're trying to do, and we can debate the merits of that, plus or minus. You, Ryan Grimm, I don't know anybody else. The only people even talking about what's actually in the damn thing. Yeah. So most people are tuned out. I've actually noticed this. Do you see any real civilian anger or, even being excited about what's happening?
Well, I think it's sad because
Not
I
really.
think people just assume that nothing's possible.
Because,
you know?
in a way, look at the incompetence of these fools. These are the people who run the country.
I relate to it because
Yeah.
I feel like, we've followed this process really closely from the beginning. We followed the ins and the outs. We've done interviews about it. We've really tried to highlight for people what is actually in this so we don't just get lost in the process. Like, why does this matter? What are the important provisions? And if ultimately it all just comes to naught, it's hard not to feel pretty nihilistic about all of that, especially the one that really gets me is the prescription drug thing because it's so popular. It's so obvious.
It's just a no-brainer, right?
We're talking about in these districts of these freaking corporate Democrats, 90% of their constituents support it. It's an absolute no-brainer to negotiate prescription drug prices, and Democrats have been running on this for more than a decade, and it might not happen. If you can't get that done, what are you doing?
Right.
Why bother with any of this? So that's the macro is I think a lot of people are tuned out because they just have so little faith that any of it will come to anything. Now, I do want to say, look, this is far from over. Before I, totally take like the black pill here. Because even if let's say that Pelosi does bring the infrastructure package to the floor, I think it will get voted down. Well, then you kind of have a reset of, do these moderates actually care about getting this thing through? Then they've got to negotiate. Then you don't have this like September 27th, which of course we've already passed now, this hard deadline as to that having to get done. So then do you get some negotiations? And from what they're saying in Washington, Manchin is, I don't want to underestimate what a stumbling block he is, especially on climate change provisions. But he also has a pattern of like kicking up a fuss and doing a theatrical display of being really at odds with the Democrats. And then ultimately, he'll negotiate and he'll take his pound of flesh, but ultimately he sort of falls in line and votes along with them. What people on the inside are saying is that Sinema's the real problem. And she seems like she's the real problem because there was a tactical calculation that Sinema and others actually really cared about getting this bipartisan infrastructure thing done. And I'm just not sure that it's the leverage, that threatening that thing is the leverage that they really thought it was.
I completely agree.
And so if she's just concerned about like how much money can I make when I'm done here, then what are you going to do?
She also likes the optics. She loves being seen as the opposition. She's actually got a very high Republican approval rating in the state of Arizona. So if she does run, maybe that's what she's banking on. She would have to win a primary first.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut. Our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions. All that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.